What does military grade discipline look like when applied to a corporate sales territory? Today, we are joined by a man who learned leadership in the trenches of the US Army and perfected it in the high stakes world of pharmaceutical sales. Welcome back to the Adapt AI podcast Spotlight series, where we shine a light on the inspiring stories and innovative strategies of change makers and disruptors shaping the future and growth of business. I'm your host, Haley. Our guest today is the founder of Core Management Training, and he's here to share the lessons he wishes he knew when he first traded his uniform for a corporate blazer. He is the leadership strategist for the pharmaceutical world. Welcome to the show, Keith Willis.
Thank you so much, Haley. Excited to be here.
Pleasure to have you with us. Keith, so just to, get started, you spent decades in the trenches managing billion-dollar brands. What was the specific tipping point moment where you realized I can make a bigger impact teaching this than doing this, and decided to launch your own firm?
I wish it was something that was sexy. I came back from vacation one day and my boss said to me that she needed to see me. I had a
Mm,
super busy day. I had interviews scheduled and she insisted that she really needed to see me. And I thought at that point, I don't think that's too good. And sure enough, she's letting me know that I was being laid off. I was surprised because I was managing and running a training team for a multi-billion dollar brand.
mhm,
And to find out that my position was being eliminated was shocking. One of
mm,
the things that I have learned is that ageism is really a thing. At the time, I was a little naive, but when I looked for other roles and other opportunities, it just seemed like there just weren't opportunities that were out there. I heard a lot of we roll up our sleeves and we work around here. The
mhm.
thought was that at my level that I didn't work. Well, everybody's a player coach nowadays. And at that point, I made the decision that I was going to go out on my own. Now, I had always had that thought that I was
Yeah.
going to go out on my own. I don't
Mhm,
know if this might be before your time, but back in the day when there were Sprint, they used to have the Sprint phone cards.
mhm.
And that was a multi-level marketing that you could do. You'd sell the phone cards, and they used to have the commercial with the pin, the drop you could hear with the fiber optics and those type
Yeah.
of things. So I had done that, had done a little bit of Amway, a little bit of real estate.
Mhm,
I even had a few coaching clients when I was working in pharmaceuticals. So I had always had kind of that itch, and it was
mhm.
an opportunity for me to be able to go out on my own. I had a thought, you know what, I could do this better on my own than I can in the corporate environment.
Right. So, thank you for sharing that because sometimes entrepreneurs who decide to go on their own typically would feel a certain pain from what they're doing if they were in a corporate world and they would be like, you know what, let me just go ahead and execute this on my own. I can choose who I want to work with. Before we explore that entrepreneurial journey, what got you started in like the sales as well aspect industry? If you don't mind sharing a little bit of that.
Sure. At this point, I had been in the Army for about maybe 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with a recruiter. They recruited junior military officers. And at the time, I was stationed overseas and worked with this outfit for I guess, about 2 or 3 years before I went to my conference. So the name of the company was Cameron Brooks. So
Mm-hmm.
they were a recruiter. And I interviewed, I think, with 11 companies over the course of 2 days. So you go to a conference and you do this developmental preparation
Mm-hmm.
program over the course of whenever you're going to make up your mind that you're going to get out. And I interviewed with a lot of major companies and, I had never heard of pharmaceutical. I had heard of pharmaceuticals, but didn't know what a pharmaceutical sales representative did. And so the
Mm-hmm.
guy that I talked to at the time was a Vietnam vet, and he talked about sales in the course of, think of a sales force as an army. So if the product's not doing well, you take the sales force and you put it against that product. So he spoke in language that I could understand. So I decided I wanted to be a sales rep. So pharmaceutical sales reps do pretty well. It was
Mhm.
interesting because most of the time when you're back in the day when you were a pharmaceutical sales rep, you had an opportunity to spend the day in the field with a sales rep. I didn't. So when I was going through training in the field with another representative, that was the first time I had a better understanding of what a pharmaceutical sales rep did.
Uh-huh.
So, needless to say, I don't know if I would have gone in that direction if I had known then. And the job had a
Mm.
lot of fun and did a lot of great things. It just
Yeah.
sometimes ignorance is bliss. And I think
Yeah. Yeah.
ignorance is bliss would have been a good thing. But I did extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
My first company, I was there for a couple of years, moved to another company, and I ended up finishing. I was number two in the region and number three in the nation out of 640 sales representatives, and was district rep of the year. So I did extremely well. Did that, was promoted a hospital rep, won another district rep of the year, and then from there I became a district sales manager. And I did that role for about 6 years before I moved into training in some other roles.
So how long did you spend in like the sales industry for pharmaceuticals in total? Like,
Probably would be, I guess, about 12 years. So I was with one company for two. I was a sales rep for another two and a half, another year and a half as a hospital rep, give or take, and then 6 years as a district sales manager.
and did you eventually, as you mentioned earlier, that had you known that when you were selling in the field with another sales rep, had you known some of the things about what they do, you wouldn't have chosen that path. But you've been in sales for like over a decade after that, so there must be something about selling that you eventually have grown to be a master of, given that you already led a team as a district manager.
I don't know if you're ever a master, but sales is fun. There's nothing like when you close a sale. And pharmaceutical sales is a little different in that in a lot of industries, when you close,
Hmm.
you somebody signs an order and you get it. What you're doing is you're trying to influence a physician to write a product. And they're going to turn around and convince a patient that they need to take that product. So it's very different. You're not closing in the sense of you're going to get an order, you know what the doctor's going to do.
Yeah.
You wait 2 or 3 months to see the data to see if the physician is writing. So
Uh-huh.
you think about from the standpoint of the sales cycle, where a doctor is, what a doctor says. There are
Mhm.
certain things the physician will ask for, information that they will talk about, and you begin to get a sense of when a physician is writing. So you always look at it as the long view. What is the physician saying? What are they doing? I would do stuff like pay attention to their body language. You know, how is their body positioned, and
Mhm.
record that in the calls, and then come back and see, is there a correlation between their body language and their writing? So, for example, if a physician had their arms crossed and I thought we were having a great conversation, more times than likely they were not buying into what I was saying. So if the numbers didn't move, I would know that I didn't have impact. If, on the
Mhm.
other hand, during that call, a physician had their arms crossed and then they went to another position and uncrossed their arms or did some body language things that would show that they were thinking, and the
Mhm.
data showed that they would move, then I knew that that was an effective call. So just some of that trial and error and paying attention to those type of things can give you some insight into whether a physician's going to write or not. Now,
Yeah.
going out on my own,
Mm.
you're doing true BD and you're closing, you get the order or you don't get the order. So there's nothing like closing a deal, and it's like an adrenaline rush. You kind of get a high
Yes.
when it
Totally.
happens and you close a deal. So it is exciting.
Yeah, I can resonate with that as well. But like just to highlight your experience in the pharmaceutical field, and you eventually led a team as well. Um, is that like those kinds of observation that only you can gain from experience? Is that something that you eventually coach your team on and like train them as well on how to become better sales rep?
My philosophy as a manager is my role is to make them to be the best version of themselves. A lot of times managers want to make their reps look just like they are. but we all have different personalities, different styles. So it's more about what is your rep doing that you can leverage their strengths and make them that best version. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times when you try to make them a copycat of you,
Mm.
then you're doing them a disservice. I used to joke that if we had a district full of Keiths, we would be in big trouble. What worked for me may not necessarily work for another rep, especially given the territory and some of the challenges that they would have.
Mm-hmm. That's a good insight. Is that what led you to eventually shift from sales to doing training after 12 years?
Yeah, so that's probably more happenstance. It's, being in sales is like every other job. You outgrow it. You're looking for other opportunities. You want to do other things. So when I had been a district manager for 6 years, I was ready to do something else.
Mm.
And so I went to another organization to get another opportunity. At the time, I was doing account management training and some other things.
Mm-hmm.
The VP that I worked with that had responsibility for training, he would ask me, it seemed like every other day, what do you want to do next? And I wasn't sure. And at one point, told him a role that I was interested in. He was going to be talking to the sales VP. He connected me with the sales VP, and I went out west and had an opportunity to be a director of field operations. Loved that job. Did that for about a year and a half. And then that role was eliminated because we ended up losing our product. Product went generic early, lost our product. And then I ended up back in training with the same company and then did that for a while. And then when we were bought, I left and went to a couple of other companies. So that's how I ended up in training and learning about how to be an expert there. And I was fortunate to be in a department where we had a lot of training expertise, got a lot of training around being or how to be an effective trainer. In fact, one of my managers had been a school teacher and he was very good at training. And so there were a lot of things that I didn't understand then. I used to get angry about stuff he'd have us do. I thought it was stupid, to be honest with you. And then years later, begin to be able to appreciate some of the things that he was trying to teach us when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to training. So training is more than just what people think it is. There's science behind it. There are methodologies behind it, and effective training is something that's important. And
Mm-hmm.
interesting enough, the military does a good job of training. So a lot of what I learned initially started with the military and those things carried on. You begin to kind of bridge those different things. In fact, I joke often, I say that it's fortunate that the military doesn't train like corporate America, because if it did, we would be in trouble.
Really?
Because
Why is that? Can you explore a little bit on that?
Well, because in the military you train to do your job. So if you're in infantry, you train infantry all the time. If you're a pilot, you're always training to be a pilot. Even if you're fixing equipment, we used to train at least once a week. In the morning, we would fix vehicles, and in the afternoon, we would do some level of training. So that was every week. And so there was a level of seriousness that goes behind training in the military. In fact, as an officer, I went to officer basic course for what, 6 months before I got to my first duty station. And usually most people either go through some level of ROTC, either that, the academy, or officer candidate school before they even go to officer basic course. So there's a lot of training, and even with NCOs, every level, there's training to every level.
Mhm.
It's nothing, or a lot of companies, you can become a district sales manager, you might not go to training for 6, 8 months. Just would never happen in the military. So there's a premium that's put on training. There are lots of roles in corporate America across many organizations and industries. People just don't get enough training. So, and that's why I say there is a correlation between training and effectiveness and productivity, uh,
Mhm.
profit and loss and those type of things. If you don't put the money into the training, at some point
Mhm.
it's going to show up.
Yeah. Let's explore the training side because eventually that's what you have built now over the years with core management training. When you started to do things on your own, did you design your own programs as well? And how did you, connect with people who you think may or like companies or businesses that may need those solutions that you have designed and have observed throughout your experience as someone in sales and also in the training field?
That piece is probably easy because from the standpoint of I had vendors that called on me, so I had an idea of what those vendors did and what the role was, and you have an idea of the ecosystem and who makes the decisions and those type of things. So I think the transition can be easy from that perspective. What's harder is going from working in a corporation to being an entrepreneur because they're two different things.
Mm,
When I was a trainer or running a training team, I only focused on the training aspects. I would work with sales, marketing,
mhm,
market access, and those type of roles. But when you're an entrepreneur, you do everything. So you're responsible for doing your business development. You're responsible for making your sales calls. If
mhm,
something is broke, you have to figure out how to fix it. If you want a website, you either have to hire somebody and then if you don't know about websites, you need to learn enough to be able to ask the right questions. If you need assistance, an executive assistant or something like that, you need to hire them. So even though there are some skills that you have, there are a lot of skills that you don't have. And
mhm,
then with corporate, decision making takes forever. I would say that often when you become an entrepreneur, you got to beat the corporate out of you. If you don't like
mhm.
something, you can change it tomorrow. If there's
Right.
something you're doing that's not working, you can change it. You don't like it, go look in the mirror. In corporate, what do? We complain. We might talk to a few people. Nothing changes. It's okay.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
a lot of differences when it comes to that. And then
Mhm.
as an entrepreneur, also, you have to figure out how do I focus on what I do best?
Mhm.
Because you can get so wrapped up in the day to day that in
Yeah.
essence, being an entrepreneur just becomes a job just like you were doing before because you're trying to do everything.
Mhm. How has that changed now, your day to day now this year from when you started 7 years ago, if I remember that right?
Yeah, 7 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. How
Uh,
day to day change? And if you look back to that, let me just also like double up on that question. If you look back to that year when you first started, what would you have changed or what would you have focused on knowing what you know now?
Knowing what I know now, I would have focused on learning how to get a customer as quickly as possible. You don't have clients, you don't have business. And it's easy to focus on a lot of other things, things like building a website and spend so much money on a website multiple times. I just don't know that that's helped me land any clients. Maybe a few, but I just you spend time on things that aren't important. Pick up the phone,
Mhm.
call people, figure out how to develop an email list, cold call, send out emails, do all of those things, figure out how to get butts in seats at the end of the day. We just spend a lot of time doing other things. And it's not that those things are not important to the business. It's the lifeline of a business is business development. And the other challenge is that when you're delivering, then you're not necessarily doing business development. So you got to figure out how do I continue to do the business development, build my client list, as well as deliver at the same time.
And how do you divide that now? Like, did you eventually outsource certain aspects of your business and delegate as a leader, as you
Yeah.
are, delegate some of the tasks that are probably either you just don't want to do, you'd rather focus on your zone of genius,
Yeah.
and, have someone help you to, have that well-oiled machine
Yeah.
that is your business.
Yeah, so some of it's trial and error. It is a learning curve. You do learn. At times you feel like, am I really learning anything? And then you realize, yeah, I am. So I think the biggest challenge is how do you systemize things? What I mean by that is that I have a better sense of business development. I've outsourced it at times.
Mhm.
Sometimes people do a fairly decent job. Sometimes it's taking too long, so they start sending you garbage.
Mhm.
If you want good leads, you got to chase them down and then figure out how do I create a system that's repeatable? And then if I'm going to give that to somebody that they can do it on their own. So I think that's the challenge and it's the dance. And I think everybody goes through it.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs that are like me, everybody has that challenge. And the other part of it is that um, you go from knowing what to do. Well, you go from not necessarily knowing what to do to
Mhm.
knowing what to do, but doesn't necessarily mean that you do it. I would guess that there are, if I talk to other entrepreneurs, we're good at giving other people advice, and then you look and say, I should take my own advice of things that need to be done.
Right.
But what you do see is the business does grow. Your business changes. You have other products and other things that you're going to sell, services that are available, and then you begin to concentrate on, different items and different things that you can do. I mean, ultimately, the economy is going to either be up or down. Those things happen on a regular basis, but when you look, you see people that are successful every day. So I think the big lesson about being an entrepreneur is that it's all about you. At the end of the day, it is about you. And if you don't like something, you are the captain of your own ship. And I think that can be a difficult lesson. I think it's easy to sit in corporate and don't get me wrong, people work extremely hard
Hmm.
and do extremely well, but it's easy to sit back and make somebody else responsible for your happiness and your outcomes. And as an entrepreneur, at the end of the day, you have no one to blame other than yourself. It doesn't make a difference that if the economy's not doing well, no one cares. You got to figure it out. It doesn't make a difference if you lost a customer. No one
Hmm.
cares. You have to figure it out. No one cares if your BD's not going well. No one cares if you're not doing enough social media. So at
Hmm.
the end of the day, it's the ultimate self-development tool because you're the one, you have to focus on your growth and your development. And I've spent, the last couple of years doing a lot of reading and just doing a lot of things to do self-improvement. And there's a direct correlation between my self-improvement and the growth of my business. And I would venture that even people that are working corporate jobs, that they would find the same thing. If they focus more time on their self-development, they'll find a direct correlation between that and their job opportunities and their job growth.
That's a lot that you have shared that I think are very useful. I do remember like something that you said earlier, learning what you started from not knowing what to do and then eventually knowing what to do, but that doesn't mean that you have to do it. It kind of reminded me of a podcast that I heard, I listened to last week, who's a business coach, and she said something like, just because I can doesn't mean that I should.
Right.
You focus on your zone of genius when it comes to
Yeah.
business. Now, just going back to, because you've obviously had 7 years is a great milestone. And then in the middle of that was pandemic. How did you navigate that kind of challenge? Did you experience any challenge at all? Because you mentioned something about building a system and maybe, have you found someone who can, you can duplicate yourself as managing that system so you can focus on the training side of if that's what you want to focus on?
That's how can I answer that question, Haley? Complex. I'll start with COVID. I
Hmm.
was relatively new in business, so I'm probably too stupid to know one way or another. And it's funny because there are opportunities that came about because of COVID. So, for example, and I still do some 1099 work.
Hmm.
There was an opportunity that if we had done it live, I would have made less money because we'd have flown in and flown out. But because it was virtual, we did it over the course of 6 weeks. I think it spanned the course. It was a US based company. I think all of the people that we trained were in the United States on the east and west coast, but the trainers were all over the world. So I think there was one or two facilitators in Spain. There were a couple of us in the United States, and then there were several that were in England. So it was an interesting circumstance because made more money doing it virtually than it would have been live. And I think, like everybody, you just kind of figure out. And I was relatively new in business, so you just kind of go with the flow.
Hmm.
So I would say that piece there. As we move forward with technology, I think the opportunity to learn how to use AI effectively makes a big difference in being able to save time.
Hmm.
I consider AI a thinking partner. So the different
Hmm.
ways that you can use it in a way that makes you far more effective and helps amplify your ability to be able to produce more work. So I think that that's a competitive difference.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel like that AI is going to take their job, and it might. But if you have to spend some time trying to learn how to use it to be able to do more work, spend less time, and focus on your zone of genius. So I think those are things that are important. Just understanding the current technology and how it can make you better.
Mhm. And what kind of technology could you share that have been useful for you so far when it comes to leveraging AI to make, shorten the time that you spend on certain things in your business?
So yeah, I mean there are a bunch of tools. I mean obviously HubSpot and CRM systems and things like that that have AI behind it. I mean for me it's learning how to use ChatGPT more effectively,
Mhm.
creating a AI clone where you begin to get it to understand what you do and how you work and how you think and using it as a thinking partner. So that's been a game changer and I'm still working through that process. I like Claude. I think Claude does a good job from a writing perspective. It writes a little bit more in depth,
Mhm.
and then Perplexity does a good job of giving you data, information, and insights and those type of things. So you can mix and match different types of tools, but I
Mhm.
think that I would say I use ChatGPT every day.
Yeah.
Probably every hour because there's so many things that you can do with it. And I think that what it does is amplifies who and what I am. I
Hmm.
like to say that garbage in, garbage out. So if you're somebody that you don't read a lot, you don't educate yourself, that you can use chat any type of AI, but it doesn't have anything to amplify. Zero times zero is still zero. But
Yep.
if you
I
you
like that.
know
I like that. Yes. Yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah, yeah, Haley, and I think the other thing is that if you do read a lot, you can take ideas and concepts and take two ideas and concepts and put them together and chat because it works as a thinking partner will help you come up with some ideas and concepts that you would have never thought of. And so I think that's the beauty of it is
Mhm.
that it will help make people more productive and help us be able to just create a lot of great stuff to be able to bring to market. So that's the exciting thing about AI. I'm not one that thinks that it's going to replace the human race. I think it's going to make us more human and if we focus on the more human side and help and let AI help us with some of the challenges that we have, I think we all will be a lot better off.
I totally agree with you on that because we have another upcoming episode, interesting insight that we will be learning on that AI would help us connect more as humans by eliminating the task that doesn't require, a human to operate it and gives us more time to be more,
Yeah.
that connection and relationship. Now, just going back to core management training, what would you say would be like the um, core programs that you have developed over the years that you help businesses with um, right now?
Yeah, so we do a lot of competency work, competency models, those type of things. Usually it's good for people to know what they're supposed to do. I think of it in terms of kind of call it the three C's, clarity, think about it as the playbook. So, and think about companies models, it's kind of the playbook. What is it that you're supposed to do? Job descriptions of what are my job responsibilities?
Mhm.
I had a manager that used to say clarity above all else. And it makes sense because when you go to work, oftentimes people don't necessarily know what they're supposed to do, or their role changes, or they have more responsibilities than they were supposed to, or what's the standard? You're giving me feedback about something, but I never understood what the standard of the job was. So we help companies around building out what that clarity is about what the roles and responsibilities are. The other part of that are the capabilities. What are the skills that you need to do the current job? We've talked a lot about AI, what those things
Mhm.
are from that perspective. So we help companies focus on what those capabilities and skills are. And then the last piece of that is coaching, which is, your behaviors. You want somebody to be able to coach you. One of the things you mentioned earlier, Haley, was this zone of genius. And I like that because I'm certified as a Clifton Strengths coach. And so I'm a big believer
Nice.
in strength finders.
Thanks.
And I think that that's a competitive edge. And being able to coach to your strengths. And what people don't realize sometimes is that sometimes your strengths are weaknesses because a weakness is anything that gets in the way of performance. And a
Mhm.
manager's ability to be able to coach you around a strength that you're either overusing or underusing can
Mhm.
help unleash your potential. So I'm a big believer in those three C's around clarity, capability, and coaching.
Coaching. And I love what you said about, you being a certified Clifton and focusing more on the strengths, because one thing that I've learned, over the years as well, having some background in training and coaching myself, is that uh, weaknesses are strengths waiting to be activated. They're sleeping giants. So it's just a
Yeah.
matter of like transitioning that into strengths. Now, you mentioned something about AI as well. Is that something that you're seeing as a major shift in the industry that you're in right now and the businesses that you're helping?
Yeah, everybody's jumped on the
Fairness? Mhm.
yeah, everybody's jumped on the AI bandwagon. I mean, there's so many tools that are out there that have AI, in them. So for example, a lot of companies have their role play tools. They have AI, they're using machine language and those type of things. And so because everybody's jumping on it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need to still understand basic skills in those things. So when you program those systems, if you put, let's say you have a selling skills program that doesn't necessarily open up the representative to be able to have more of a conversation versus a one-way dialogue where you're just giving them kind of a product detail about the product.
Right.
Customers don't want that anymore. They can grab some of that information online. They can
Hmm.
go to the company website. There are a variety of different places that they can go to. What
Yeah.
they want the representative for sometimes is to kind of pressure test their thinking, get a little bit of the color commentary, understand, maybe their adverse events or adverse effects that they should be thinking about. They want more from the rep than just to go through and just go through, here are all the product specifics
Yeah.
because they could do that on their own. So you have to be able to bring some level of value to your customers. So th those are things that I think that are very important. So it's easy to focus on all of the technology. I can't remember if it's McKinsey, but it said 70% of transformations fail.
Hmm.
So when I think about using tools like AI, new CRM systems, new account management systems help, but at the end of the day, it's about people. And if you can help people be better at the skills and capabilities, then that actually enhances the tools that you give them to be able to use.
Right. I certainly agree with that as well because, you know, hammer may be like the strongest one or the most advanced design, but if you don't know how to wield it,
Yes.
right, what's the point?
Right.
Right? So
Exactly.
final second to the last question. As you look at next year, 2026, and the next 3 years, what what kind of complex or new problems do you think your clients and the businesses that you've been helping with would bring to you? Like, what do you see about that direction?
I think we're kind of in a transition, with AI tools, technology. What I'm finding more and more companies are going through downsizings, reorganization, and people are being burned out. I'm in the process of writing a book and developing a course, Never Look for a Job Again. And so the ideal behind it is that you have to take control of your career. And there are people are out there that they're either stuck, they don't enjoy or they don't like their job, they don't know what to do, they don't necessarily know how to network, they don't know how to take that next step. And
Right.
because people are so busy, it's easy to get into the day to day where you forget about those things and then you miss opportunities. So
Yeah.
those are things that I think that people are still working through. You're going to continue to see a lot of transformation with a lot of these tools, whether it be new systems. And we don't like change, and we like things to stay the same, but things
Yeah.
change on a regular basis, and some of the changes are massive. I mean, every year you go to any given company and
Mhm.
you look at how they're structured, you can almost guarantee that that structure will look completely different. And so I think that can be unsettling. And
Mhm.
I think ultimately everybody wants to, have some level of stability, know that they're going to have a job. And so helping people be able to take control of that, I think, is something that's important.
That's, I think, going to be very, very helpful as well, especially with the changes and, that sense of fear that some people are experiencing or, having about AI replacing their jobs. It's actually being able to leverage the solutions that are already existing through AI to help them get better. I that would be interested when you publish it. Is that something that you would be considering offering as well as maybe a program to coach some, you know, employees on or those who are looking to shift maybe careers?
Yeah, so I am a mentor for American corporate partners, and we help, people transition from the military. I had one mentee that I worked with that I helped him secure a higher level job, and I gave him the career development guide. And I've been saying I was going to build this course, so he's my testimonial that I have that he has for his raise and everything. So the genesis of the course came from a lot of those, that not only military interactions, but just with people in general, trying to figure out how do I get promoted and write blog posts about, mentorship and sponsorship and the differences in those type of things. And so there's just a need for people to be able to take control of their career. So I do think that there will be more of that. This will be something that I'm going to offer to individuals. So I'm in the
Mhm.
process of doing interviews just to see what people want, what people need, and there will be a little bit of trial and error. I did
Yeah,
get a coach to have a conversation about how to launch this course.
right. Yeah.
So that'll be a lot of my homework over the next 2 or 3 weeks is to get this course to have as much exposure as possible. So I did buy the domain, never look for a job again, and pretty well along the way of writing the book and going to build out some keynotes and a whole bunch of other stuff. So really looking forward. That's one of my key projects for 2026.
That sounds exciting, certainly, Keith. So lastly, if people want to be a beta tester for that program for you, and also connect with you as well in terms of, other trainings that core management may be able to assist with, how can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at coremanagementtraining.com. There is a landing page for Never Look for a Job Again, and then you can link in with me on LinkedIn. I believe I've posted an assessment, or just send me a DM of some sort saying you're interested in the course and you want to hear more about it. You can just DM me on LinkedIn, and we can connect.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing your 25 years of wisdom and more, and 7 years in the business. I'm sure we'll, learn more from you in the next coming years as well. We really appreciate your time and sharing with us all these insights, Keith. To learn more about core management training and the book and the course that Keith will be building for 2026, check the show notes below. And any final words for our audience about, how to be able to stand out in the next coming years, whether you're building your own business or simply shifting to a higher level position?
So, Haley, the only thing I would just tell people is just remember you're the captain of your own ship. If you want it to be, it's up to you, and that you have all of the tools and resources that you need to be great. So, look forward to interacting with people from your show, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you as well. Let's take that mission back to our teams this week as well. So, yeah, remember to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Thanks again, Keith.
Thanks, Haley.